I'm basically sitting at the SIAC at this point as the Attorney General's representative. And so I'm running back and forth across Pennsylvania Avenue twice a day to brief her, say, there is tremendous consternation about who's going to be the Office of Origin. You think it would be bigger things than that, but in the early going, we're involved in that discussion.
The Attorney General decided to stay out of it. Fran Townsend and Mary Jo White couldn't win the argument. And as it happened, O'Neill's other ally, Deputy Director Bear Bryant, was out of cell phone range on vacation. So the head of the criminal division, one of those men in Louis Freeh's inner circle, Tom Picard, was temporarily in charge. He decided the New York team would not take the lead in the investigation. Washington would. And John O'Neill would not get command.
This is the World Series, and he's gotten benched. And that's exactly how he feels about it. And he is very hurt, very upset about it, and bitter.
O'Neill hit the phones. He ended up venting to Bear Bryant.
He said, "You're going to have a stroke." It was so intense.
This is the first guy you heard the word Al-Qaeda and Bin Laden from. Shouldn't he be there?
Well, he wasn't.
But that wasn't your decision. I got a feeling that wasn't your decision.
Well, he wasn't there.
It wasn't your decision, was it?
He wasn't there.
By early summer of 2001, other intelligence services were putting the Bush White House on full alert. Every single indication was that Al-Qaeda was planning a major attack on the United States.
In June of 2001, the intelligence community issued a warning that a major Al-Qaeda terrorist attack would take place in the next many weeks. They said they were unable to find out exactly where it might take place. They said they thought it might take place in Saudi Arabia. We asked, could it take place in the United States? They said, we can't rule that out. And so, in my office in the White House complex, the CIA sat, briefed the domestic U.S. federal law enforcement agencies, immigration, federal aviation, Coast Guard, Customs, and the FBI was there as well, agreeing with CIA, told them that we were entering a period where there was a very high probability of a major terrorist attack.
In New York, O'Neill was also convinced Al-Qaeda had picked a target. But he was, by now, more marginalized than ever at the FBI. And so in July of 2001, when that memo from the Phoenix office pleading for investigations of flight schools made its way to headquarters, it was not passed on to O'Neill or Mon in New York. Nor was the struggle that August of the Minnesota office to investigate the alleged 20th hijacker, Zacharias Moussaoui. The most sophisticated office in the FBI, the office that, under O'Neill, had been dealing with these matters for 6 years, apparently was out of the loop.
John had heard the alarm bells too, and we used to talk about it, and he knew that there was a lot of noise out there, that there were a lot of warnings, or a lot of red flags, and that it was at a similar level that they were hearing before the millennium, which was an indication that there was something going on. And yet he felt that he was frozen out, that he was not in a capacity to really do anything about it anymore, because of his relationship with the FBI. So it was a source of real anguish for him.
O'Neill's after-hours reveries around Manhattan took on a morose quality. He knew it was time to go, But where? His friend at the White House, Dick Clark, had an idea.
Shortly after the Bush administration came into office, the question came, well, who would you recommend to do the terrorism job? And I came up with 4 or 5 names. The first name that came to mind was John Oneil.
But the job required Senate confirmation. The FBI would have to endorse him. And Oneil knew better than to believe they would. And then, 13 months after that briefcase incident, with the investigation still open, a well-placed leak to a newspaper made sure his government career was over.
The New York Times is now starting to ask questions about that incident, both at the headquarters level and at the New York field office, in spite of sort of Jimmy Kallstrom and others trying to persuade the New York Times that somebody had an agenda here. This was really sort of ill-motivated. It was clear that they were going to run with it.
And that was the final nail in John O'Neill's coffin that they were going to use to have him retire.
Did he know who did it?
He suspected.
Did he confront them?
Yes.
And what happened?
It was completely denied. The person that he felt did it said absolutely not, wouldn't want to hurt you in any way, shape, or form.
It's been reported that was Tom Picard.
That's who John felt it was. Tom Picard. And John really never knew. He was out to get John for a long time. And John never really knew why.
At the time, Tom Picard was interim director of the FBI. Now retired, Picard would not agree to an interview with Frontline. He was, however, quoted in Esquire magazine saying, "The briefcase was a big deal. It was not so much that he lost it. He shouldn't have had those materials with him in the first place. Losing the briefcase just added to it. Let's just say it was not John O'Neill's finest hour."
I think the cost personally had become so high for John. The New York Times article, the outstanding issue about the missing bag, there had become such a personal cost. And I think he had sustained so many blows. You know, he would say, how many body blows does somebody have to take? I think it had become too much. It was just time for him. He just didn't want to take it anymore.
At the end of August 2001, Agent Oneil ended his 25-year career with the FBI. He was 49 years old.
His last day, he calls me. It's probably 6 o'clock at night, to which I say, what in the world are you still doing there on your last day? And he said, well, I just signed the authorization to send the agents back into Yemen. And I wasn't leaving here till I did it. Because I promised that we would send them back. When I pulled them out, I had to. But I was determined to be the one who signed the piece of paper to send them back.
Oneil needed to make some money. Just being John Oneil had gotten very expensive. Jimmy Kallstrom and others made some calls. There was one job in particular he was really interested in. It paid $350,000 a year, but it also had a special kind of significance for Oneil. It was chief of security at those buildings Ramzi Youssef had tried to destroy, the World Trade Center.
And I joked with him. I said, well, that'll be an easy job. They're not going to bomb that place again. And he said, well, actually, he immediately came back and he said, no, actually, they've always wanted to finish that job. I think they're going to try again. And, of course, that's something I'll just never forget.
On the night of September 10th, John Oneil did what he loved doing, and he did it from his favorite table at Elaine's.
It was classic John. To this day, I can remember John sitting in a chair looking up at me with that classic John Oneil smile saying, it doesn't get better than this.
The talk, of course, turned to bin Laden.
he had said to me, "We're due, and we're due for something big." That was just, he said, that some things have happened in Afghanistan. I don't like, the way things are lining up in Afghanistan. And he said, I sense a shift, and I think things are going to happen. And I said, when? He said, I don't know, but soon. And that was just his sense of things. We left about 2:30. John gave me a big bear hug and said, I'll see you tomorrow. And John went home, and that was the last I saw of him.